Hello, science friends. So, you probably noticed yesterday that you started a new unit all about weathering and erosion. This is actually our last unit in science for the whole year. So, that's exciting. Today is lesson 2 of this unit, and it's all about constructive forces. So, here is the standard that we are studying in this unit. In order to talk about constructive forces, we need to review the two types of forces. So we've got deconstructive forces and we've got constructive forces. Deconstructive forces are processes that destroy landforms or break them down. There's weathering. That's kind of a slower over time process. And then there's erosion. That happens a little bit faster. Some examples are landslides, volcanoes, earthquakes, floods, just to name a few. But today we're really going to focus on constructive forces. Constructive forces are forces that actually build up existing landforms or create a new one. They are caused usually by water or gravity or wind or even glaciers. Some examples that we're going to talk about today are deposition, landslides, volcanic eruptions, and floods. Now you may be saying, Ms. Callahan, you said some of those were deconstructive forces. That's right, some of these could be both. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. Taking a look at this is something that we need to keep in mind is weathering, erosion, and deposition go together. It's kind of a process. You can remember the phrase WED, W-E-D, for weathering, erosion, deposition, because that's the order that it happens in. Typically, weathering and erosion are deconstructive. That means that they are tearing down or breaking or destroying some sort of land. We've got weathering, which is actually the breaking down of rock. We've got erosion, which is the movement of rock. And we've got deposition, which is the dropping of rock. So I came up with a little fun, handy-dandy thing to help us remember this. Weathering breaks it, erosion takes it, and deposition drops it. So break it, take it, drop it. Weathering, erosion, deposition. Just a goofy way to remember that. And so deposition is constructive. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So here's an example of deposition. It's water erosion. So water is carrying the sediments away, and deposition is dropping them at the mouth of the river. An example of this would be in the Mississippi River. There is a delta called the Mississippi Delta, and that is from where the river has taken sediments or rocks, sand, pieces of land down and dropped them at the mouth of the river. Another example of deposition is sand dunes. So we have wind erosion. The wind is carrying the sand and drops it, let's say in the desert, to make a mound or like a little hill of sand. Or at the beach, you may have seen sand dunes before. The wind carries the sand and drops it at the sand dune and creates kind of a little hill of sand. The dropping is the deposition part. All right. You might remember this from the first semester. We talked about the 4 different layers of the earth. You've got the inner core, the outer core, the mantle, and the crust. We'll need to keep this in mind as we talk about some of these next type of forces that we're going to talk about. A volcano, which you've probably all heard of, is a break in the Earth's crust. So that outer layer of the Earth's crust gets broken, and the magma that's under it in the mantle comes out into the Earth's surface. Volcanoes can be found deep in the ocean, or they can be found on land on Earth's surface. They are the result of a constructive process. So think about it like this. The volcanoes show up on the Earth's surface where the magma pushes through the weakness of the crust. Magma is the molten rock that is down here bubbling up. And then when it breaks through and comes out, it's called lava. The lava is thrown out of the volcanoes, and as it cools and hardens, it makes the volcanoes bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, the islands of the state of Hawaii are all landforms that were created or constructed through a constructive process of volcanoes. You can kind of see in this diagram here how it created all the different islands over time from Hawaii. Also, talking about volcanoes and earthquakes, we need to talk more about the Earth's surface and how, including under the ocean, it is made up of something called tectonic plates. So imagine a bunch of plates put together to make the surface of the Earth. These plates form sections of the surface of the Earth, and some plates actually are moving toward each other, away from each other, or even sliding past each other. The area where two or more tectonic plates meet and show movement is called a fault. So you see all these little black lines, these black jaggedy lines all over this map. Those are all fault lines. That's where the plates come together. Sometimes they move close to each other, sometimes they move apart, and sometimes they slide past each other. Very, very slowly, of course. And if you notice all of these little red dots, those are all volcanoes. So you see how volcanoes are mostly found along those fault lines where the plates of the tectonic plates of the Earth are moving. All right, so that means we need to talk about ridges. Let's talk about what ridges are. First, we're going to watch a little video that kind of gives us some information about this. All right, so ridges are formed when tectonic plates collide with each other and push up. This creates hills and mountains. Ridges and individual mountains can also be formed in areas where magma, molten rock from the Earth's core, pushes up between or through the tectonic plates. Raise your hand if you've ever been to Stone Mountain. Anybody ever been to Stone Mountain or climbed Stone Mountain before or heard of Stone Mountain? Well, Stone Mountain actually may be, they think, one of these magma-created mountains, which is pretty cool. All right, you guys, that is all for today. You can use all of this to help you with your quick check and your notes. I hope you have an awesome day. Bye, everyone.